as we continue to look at the fallout and get reaction from the hemp industry about this week's news, I'm so happy to be joined by an old buddy from Massachusetts. His name is Thomas Winstanley. He used to be the chief marketing officer of Theory Wellness for, I'm pretty sure, about 5 years,
Yeah.
and now is an executive VP for a company called edibles.com. So, Thomas, thank you so much for joining us. And the thing that I knew that where I knew you were and what you were doing is when I was reading quotes this week, you were so eloquent on so many of the newsletters that I read. So, look, walk me through. Did you expect this to happen? There was, I certainly understand enough of the backroom stuff that has been going on, but did you have any warning? Did you think that this issue would actually bring the government back to work?
So I think we have always had a consideration knowing that we are not on stable ground from a policy perspective. We've constantly fought to gain policy at the federal level that would codify the industry in a way that the Farm Bill did not, with consumer protections, a four-pillar of regulatory guidance to allow this category to continue to grow. We've seen some of that regulatory implementation at a state level, but not quite at the federal level. We knew also that Mitch McConnell is passionate about this and that he was not going to back down, especially in a swan song of his political career.
Mhm.
Did we expect it to manifest the way that it did around a government shutdown? Probably not. Did we see it coming? We always had an inkling that it was possible, and it wasn't until I think Wednesday that we heard that this language that we had been fighting, a poison pill, if you will, had been slipped into the minibus package, which was very unfortunate.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I've learned a lot. I watched the Dales report this week. I'm going to give them credit. And he explained how the bourbon lobby, and by the way, my naivete, who the hell knew if there was even a bourbon lobby?
A lobby for everything, Jimmy.
I guess so. And that's how this is how this country works. And I've had a great lesson on the one thing that this country does better than anything is delay, delay, and delay. And then the only time they make any noise in the government is when they have to pass a bill like the appropriations bill. And of course, we're the government could shut down at the end of January again, right? I mean, that's pretty much how. If the government is the largest business in the world, I have no idea how they stay in business. I mean,
By,
that's how I think.
by procrastinating and doing everything at the last minute and shoehorning as much in as possible. And I think that's what we were subjected to. And unfortunately, it's very difficult when we are actively lobbying. We're one of the only industries that goes to Capitol Hill and says, please regulate us.
Right.
Please put laws on us. And here's what we recommend for you to do, because for people like Mitch McConnell, the worst irony is that 85% of his concerns are concerns that we, as good operators in the category, have concerns about. And yet, political action and theater at its finest came down to the wire and was a let's overstuff something because there cannot be thoughtful discussion around it.
And and I can go to the next step because when the 2018 Farm Bill was passed, it put regulatory power in the hands of the FDA, and they have done nothing for 7 years. And
Correct.
and now the government is again taking it out on its people to fix something that they did wrong. It boggles my mind, Thomas.
You know what? I think there's a huge irony in this where Mitch McConnell is the master of unintended consequences. Unintended consequence number one was creating a blossoming $28 billion industry. Unintended consequence number two, he is now going to destroy that industry and leave farmers, consumers, and Americans in a worse place than they were before all of this. He has essentially initiated an entire consumer population who've never had access to THC products into a category that they have embraced, as we have seen through regulated cannabis markets in areas where cannabis is not legal. And now that we have seen this major adoption, he seeks to take it back away. Two unintended consequences in a single bill, one man.
And I remember when that bill passed. Did you ever know the late Bill Downing in Massachusetts?
No, I don't think so. I know I knew the Downing boys, former state senator, and they were Pittsfield guys from Western Mass.
That's right. And I understand. I have a lot of memories from Lennox. Let's just leave it at that for now.
Sure.
But I was at an event the night the bill passed with Dr. Uma Dhanabalan and with Bill Downing. And it was early after all, because it was, I think it was in December. And November is when the bill was, passed and everybody's excited. And I remember Bill saying, they just legalized the cannabis sativa plant, and everybody looked around and went, "What do you mean? They just
Yeah.
right?" That's pretty much what they did, and they gave a federal legal definition without having an idea of the Pandora's box they were opening, Thomas.
Yes, and it was actually Donald Trump of all,
I know.
presidents, it was Donald Trump. I think maybe one of the most impactful presidential moves to sign that farm bill. I would say in THC, maybe the equivalent would be President Obama in the Cole memo. This was an interesting continuation, and I am curious about over time what happens when Donald Trump realizes that a $28 billion industry is being usurped from the American public with 300,000 jobs across the country because of the motivations of one individual.
And it's going to hurt his approval rating. And I believe that's the only thing that drives this guy. So I'm still optimistic and hopeful that maybe the ruling Republican Party will do the right thing, since they tend to protect their own pocketbooks. And a lot of people in this country still vote with their wallets or their pocketbooks. I get all that. And again, I'm a hopeful guy. I think both parties, I'm not a big fan of both parties right now, because I really think the Democrats had their chance, and like they seem to always do, they blew it. And now the Republicans are in charge and they have their own little challenges. But the role that money and lobbying plays in this country, because if money's the root of all evil and our government is dependent on that system, are we still the greatest country in the? I really have questioned a lot of this, and I guess it's just because I'm learning more and more about how this country has worked all these years.
Yeah, and look, and I think from our perspective, we understand kind of the framework in which this needs to operate. And I think part of, as we start to look at, okay, we lost a really major battle in a very public fashion in a way that I don't think served the voice of the industry and framed us in a way that was less than savory to our cause. That being said, the power of America is that we are a meritocracy. We can still we have the opportunity to create vehicles that will play out in the court of public opinion as we move into midterm elections, as we move towards the public outcry around, now that we are moving beyond the Affordable Care Act, SNAP and WIC benefits. Well, guess what? People are now starting to realize that hemp is a major keystone issue right now. If this was maybe not happening in a midterm year, I don't know that I would feel the same way about the chances we have today, but I will tell you the vehicle in which this was determined made it very difficult for people who are advocates to speak up at the congressional level. Once we are freed of the congressional circus that was this spending bill,
Mhm.
I think there are a lot more, I think we have a lot more support than maybe was reflected in the vehicle in which this was executed. And we do not see this as recriminalization. We see 1 year to regulate, not 1 year to ban. And that's where we are marching.
And that's going to lead the news. I could tell you that right now, Thomas. You're very quotable. You really are. I mean, I'm sorry, you talk in sound bites. You're very,
It was all my training at Theory. Not gonna lie.
there you go.
It was all my training,
Whatever it takes, whatever it takes. I think that's
whatever it
great.
takes.
So the next questions are really the most important. What is edibles.com going to do? What are your plans? You kind of just hinted you've got a year to get this back on track and come out of this perhaps with one regulatory body or at least something that allows both sides of this issue because it has driven a wedge between the legal cannabis Delta 9 THC world and the hemp world. And and maybe as we'll look back on this, we'll see this week as the key to finally getting workable regulations so both industries can survive. You've always had an overregulated and you had an underregulated, and the margins were big differences here, right?
No
So
question.
yeah, and it,
Yeah, no question.
and of course everybody's trying to do the right thing. They
Yes.
really are.
Yes. And and look, you know this, Jimmy, I came from cannabis.
Mhm.
So stepping across kind of the line of cannabis to hemp, from a personal standpoint, my mission has never changed, which is how do we create safe access to THC products,
Mhm.
period.
Mhm.
As I look towards what happens next and as we start to frame out, I would argue in some ways this loss was something that was probably necessary when we look back to reflect upon to say we needed to go through this pain to unify an industry around a commonly set goal of what does regulatory look like, galvanize the interest of trade associations, consumers, and really sculpt this into something that becomes actionable. What just happened was not actionable. There was nothing actionable on our end to do. What this actually now does is unifies us in a very strong single voice to bring action. And it has catapulted this topic into mainstream media to facilitate the conversation we have been fighting to have for the last years.
Yeah, that's a great comment. And what about edibles.com? I mean, what's going on? And you guys have obviously prepared for this, I'm guessing, and have a
Oh,
strategy. Yes. So
yeah.
what's next?
So for us, our mission is not changing. We are not turning over operations. We are not winding down. If anything, we are winding up even further. We recognize that we have an interesting voice in the category. There are a lot of brands in the category who are promoting their beverages, their gummies, their topicals, so on and so forth. And what we really have an interesting frame of reference on is that as a marketplace with a lot of the nation's leading brands in this space, well, we have a really good architecture that is a proof of concept of how hemp commerce can survive and be self-regulated as we have done into a way that becomes tolerable for regulators. And it's easy for me to say this, and the real way to show this, I think, is that I am part of Edible Brands, which most people know as my sister company here, Edible Arrangements. We are a trusted national brand. And for us to come into this marketplace and do what we are doing today shows that there is a way to do this consciously, thoughtfully, and within the confines of the regulatory landscape.
Yeah, fantastic. Thomas, I appreciate you taking the time. I could talk to you for a lot longer, just for the record, okay?
Let's do it at MJ BizCon.
We'll see you at MJ BizCon. And yes, in fact, I'm going to probably send you some information about what we're doing. And it's going to feature an AI correspondent. Shh.
Ooh,
My
interesting.
job, my job is to preserve the human element in news gathering. Okay. And
Love
yet I
that.
also recognize the role that the AI can play. So, Thomas, it's never a dull moment in this space. The word fascinating is used all the time with people who are in it and understand it and still want to stay in it despite losing everything, whatever it is. We're just passionate about the cause because we recognize we're part of history. I've never had an issue like this where I really recognize I'm documenting history going on as we speak. It keeps me going. It really does. And
Same here. Same
yeah,
here. It doesn't feel like work when you know that you're pushing against something that it's very rare that somebody in their career gets to work on something that will impact millions of people and create access to the things that are very valuable to their health and longevity. And that is something that I am exceedingly passionate about and love to do.
And I have respect for you for that because, after all, I came from the sports industry. Okay. So it was a lot different. Now I've got a real cause that I can wrap my hands around and support. And that's exactly what I'm doing. So keep up the good work. Thank you for taking the time. And I will see you in Vegas. But by all means, remember now, you know how to reach me, and I am here for the industry. I want the industry to have at least a professional broadcast, at least it used to be one anyway, willing to hear those stories and support your cause. So thank you again for taking the time.
Hi there, I'm Ava from WPCM TV, your friendly media host. Big news, MJ BizCon 2025 is coming up December 2nd to 5th at the Las Vegas Convention Center, the premier business-to-business cannabis business conference and expo, where over 200 speakers, over 70 sessions, and a massive show floor await. If you're ready to elevate your brand and grab national-level exposure with WPCM TV on site, let's lock this in now. Click the link in the description, drop us a message, and we'll save a media slot just for you. Let's make your brand one of the stars of MJ BizCon. See you in Vegas.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Pro Cannabis Media is now WPCM TV, your go-to website for things cannabis. WPCM TV is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news you need.
Amy Carter. This week, she reports from inside the State House in Lansing.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters with this week's Michigan Report for Cannabis, Coast to Coast News.
And talk shows about all things cannabis.
Well, thank you. And thank you for all you're doing to get the word out. Like, this show is so important.
It all started back in 2018 when Emmy award-winning talk show host Jimmy Young kicked it off with the In the Weeds podcast.
That it's not just any generic paper towel. You do have a brand that you use, right?
Yeah, we live or die by the bounty. I mean,
The quicker picker-upper. I love that.
His mission? Building an army of multimedia journalists and podcast hosts who are documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition in this country and around the world. Fast forward to today, and we've got the nation's only weekly cannabis coast-to-coast news program with Elena Pinto.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News, WPCM TV's weekly production of the fight to end cannabis prohibition in this country and around the world. I'm Elena Pinto.
Delivering the nation's only TV news-style program. Since June 2021, WPCM TV has racked up over 1.3 million views, with 17 million impressions, and picked up over 16,000 subscribers on YouTube alone. For more information, contact the team at WPCMTV.com.